AITA for telling my parents' friends that my dad is the reason we don't see my mom's oldest daughter? Quick BG to start. My mom was married twice. She had a daughter, Niev, with her first husband. He died when Niev was 6-7 years old. My mom's first husband's death was already tragic and traumatic for Niev, but what was worse was he died after leaving her school in the middle of the day to get back to work. Her class had an activity hour for parents to join in with, and Niev and her dad made some kind of frame for a photo of them. He was dead 5 minutes after he left the school. There was an accident. Niev treasured that photo and the frame. My mom met my dad a year later and they got married 2 years after that. So Niev would have been 8/9. When Niev was 14, she and my dad were arguing. I was too young to remember, but I heard this story from my grandparents. Niev and my dad would argue about my dad being Niev's stepdad, and my dad wanted her to accept him into the role of a real father figure. But Niev didn't want that. My dad would get so frustrated over it, and Niev would too. She wanted my dad to leave her alone. And then one day it became a bigger fight than normal because Niev told someone she only lived with one parent and my dad was hurt or whatever. It got crazy intense between them, and then my dad did the worst thing he could ever do. He threw the frame Niev and her dad made, the last thing she did with him before he died, into the fire. There was a photo of Niev and her dad in there too. From that moment on, Niev wanted nothing to do with us. I don't really remember Niev well. I was only like 5 when I saw her last. I remember how much she despised my dad, and knowing why, I totally get it. She never forgave Mom for not divorcing Dad on the spot either. Niev has not been in our lives since she was 17-ish. She moved out of state to be with her paternal aunt, and before that, for like a year, she lived with our shared grandparents. But she didn't want to be around my parents at all. I only remember seeing her one time, when I was 5 and I'm almost 17 now, so yeah, don't really remember her. But knowing what went down, it doesn't surprise me, and I don't blame Niev. My parents had some friends over, mostly new friends, but some old ones too, and at some point Niev came up in conversation and my parents told their friends that Niev had become such a troubled person, and Dad brought up how she disowned everyone and had wished for him to die the last time she saw us. They were really making Niev sound terrible, so I told them the reason Niev hated us all and the reason she wasn't around is because Dad burned the last thing she ever made with her dad, something she probably had a lot of mixed emotions tied up in. So it was his fault. Not Niev's. My parents were furious with me for saying all that to their friends. They told me it was not my place and I humiliated my dad. AITA?